Should it matter if an activist comedian is making up stories about, among other things, run-ins with law enforcement? I think so. Hasan Minhaj was a Daily Show correspondent, was even the featured performer at the White House Correspondents' Dinner a few years back. A lot of his material is about his life as an Indian-American Muslim millennial and about his experience with racism in America, which he has shared in his Netflix show called Patriot Act, as well as 2 Netflix stand-up comedy specials, among many other places. A quick example of the activism. Here are recent photos taken of him when he joined the Writers Guild of America union members on the picket line supporting the ongoing strike. And to take a close look at the sign he's holding, "Words mean nothing until writers make magic." A nice thought. But according to a new story in The New Yorker, Minhaj's words involve a lot of hocus pocus, especially when relaying some of his stories of being discriminated against as a Muslim American. Quote, in Minhaj's approach to comedy, he leans heavily on his own experience as an Asian American and Muslim American, telling harrowing stories of law enforcement entrapment and personal threats. But after many weeks of trying, I had been unable to confirm some of the stories that he had told on stage. When we met on a recent afternoon at a comedy club in the West Village, Minhaj acknowledged for the first time that many of the anecdotes he related in his Netflix specials were untrue. Now, let's be clear. This isn't, from my view, some comedian who's embellishing anecdotes about a friend or a family member, or I walked into my apartment and this happened. This is an activist comedian who built his brand on his experiences being the victim of the ugly side of American society, except now it turns out those stories weren't true. His defense, they were, quote, emotional truths. Quote, every story in my style is built around a seed of truth. My comedy, Arnold Palmer, is 70% emotional truth, this happened, and then 30% hyperbole, exaggeration, and fiction. It's referring to the drink, which is a mix of tea and lemonade called an Arnold Palmer. And I get that there's a creative license taken in stand-up comedy in the interest of laughs. Chris Rock, in a recent Netflix special, he talked about a very real and personal subject of his divorce proceedings and having to prove he had a suitable home for his children.
Then the judge was like, Mr. Rock, I need to see pictures of the refrigerator and the food inside to make sure the children have enough to eat. I'm like, what have you heard about me? I'm Chris Rock, not Chris Brown.
Of course, Chris Rock didn't actually say that to the judge, but he took a real, serious experience, his divorce, and used some creative license to create a funny bit. He made up the funny part, right? But Hasan Minhaj is making up the serious part. Take, for example, this moment from his 2022 Netflix special, in which he relays a story he supposedly experienced post 9/11.
I was 16 years old. It's 2002. I'll never forget this. I'm in the back of the mosque, and in the middle of the sermon, this super ripped white guy shows up to the mosque, just like, hi, I'm Brother Eric. I'm here to convert to Islam. And my dad's like, Hasan, you see that? It's a miracle. I'm like, Dad, Eric is a federal agent.
Minhaj goes on to relay how Eric really was an undercover FBI agent who'd gained the trust of his Muslim community. He was invited to dinner at Minhaj's house. That was all before Eric eventually tried to entrap Hasan and others by talking about jihad. And when Hasan decides to mess with Brother Eric by telling him he wanted to get his pilot's license, the police showed up and slammed Hasan on the hood of his car. Of course, none of it happened, right? As if the FBI and the police don't get bad enough press. Hasan Minhaj piles it on with lies, or as he puts it, emotional truths. Again, he isn't just a comedian. He testified before Congress in 2019. He's a social commentator. He calls for social justice. You can't hide behind the, hey, we make things up and that's what we do. It's comedy. These aren't emotional truths. These are invented stories to sow distrust in law enforcement. But I don't know. I'm not in this world. Joining us now is someone who is comedian and social commentator, Pete Dominick. Pete, good to see you.
Dan, good to see you.
Am I wrong?
You look great, by the way.
Thank
and
you.
You play modest. You say you don't know. You know. You've got opinions, and I appreciate
Of course I have
that. It's a
opinions.
great setup.
I'm expressing my opinions in this setup. I think that I think he deserves to be condemned for this, but I don't know. But when I say I don't know you're in the comedy world. Is this just comedy?
It's not just comedy. I mean, I think that honesty has always been a bit too respected as a virtue in comedy. You don't have to tell the truth. It's comedy. You're not journalists. You're not documentarians. But I think you made a good point about the differentiation of certain people. Certain people. I mean, I worked at The Daily Show with Hasan Minhaj. I worked at The Colbert Report. I work at HBO's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver when we're not on strike. And I think these guys have created a world in which their message is very political in many ways. It is very opinionated, and the truth matters to them. You make a pact with the audience as a comedian, but my agreement with the audience is not Chris Rock's agreement, and it's not Hasan Minhaj's agreement. But as you just showed in that clip, and he says, "I'll never forget," and then he talks about being victimized where he actually wasn't a victim. It matters. It matters because when you're talking about real people, it's different. Dan, when I talk about how cheap my dad is, and my dad who's watching us right now, he knows.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.